not about balance of, when we talk about color and tonalities and textures, and we tend to think in layers, and designers, by and large, I'm not saying it's wrong, but that is a final step. But to start there is wrong. Like that doesn't help us to move forward in terms of our responsibility as designers. We first need to have those real basics in place, and then color those things in later, because they are important, but they're not what they don't drive the solution.
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Yes, some familiar faces. Hi there. Welcome at the Beyond Interior Design podcast. All right. Well, I'm going to start in a few minutes. You already see Callie in the video channels. Of course, my companion Sven is here to manage the chat box and to answer your questions during the podcast. Of course, when you have any questions, you can ask Callie at the end. We have a Q&A session prepared, so if you have anything to ask, put it in the chat. We will collect them, and we will ask the questions at the end. So, well, it's 10 o'clock, so let's start. We have always people who are joining later, so but that's their problem. You are here right on time at 10 o'clock, so let's start our next live podcast. All right. Hi, I'm Mark Miskus, co-founder of the Institute of Interior Impact, together with Sven van Buren, and thank you for listening to the Beyond Interior Design podcast. Me and my business partner love beautiful environments, but we're most of all interested in the person and the stories behind, the why behind the best interior designs. And that's how we got in touch with our special guest of today. We read a lot of articles about him on LinkedIn, about design thinking, about behavioral design, and we couldn't resist to reach out to him and to talk about the most beautiful profession in the world, interior design. I'm talking about trained architect Callie van der Merwe. He moved in 2016 from South Africa to Sydney, Australia, to open Design Partnership Australia. Hospitality design agency focused on designing for predictive human behavior in social spaces. And with a long list of award-winning projects, we are proud to have Callie in the ring here today with us. A sneak peek of the topics of today: design thinking versus behavioral design, how we are defined by human nature, the power and responsibility of designers, our design role, and the higher purpose and ultimate outcome of a well-designed space. We're going to pick his brain today because this is how you are going to make real impact with your interior designs. Here he is, live from Sydney, Callie van der Merwe.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Callie.
Thank you.
Hi. Congratulations with all the awards from the last few weeks, months.
Yeah. Thank you.
You had a lot. Yeah. How does it feel?
Yeah. Look, I mean, we talk about awards often, but awards are probably more important to the client than they are really to the profession of design. I think we over dramatize and the gravitas on awards are too much. I think awards mean almost little to nothing. And one shouldn't be chasing awards at all. And, just to make, if I can, if you'll allow me just to kind of qualify that statement, is design is judged by designers, architecture by architects. And so that's a curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge really means that we look at things quite academically. So we'll look at things that, how detailed have we, how we molded the ceiling, how have we detailed the floor, what's the junction between different elements, we tend to unpack it in these components, and because that's how we've been taught as architects and designers, all the components that make a whole. And so we reverse that when we look at design and space, and it's not really what it's about. A design of any kind is the impact it has on people, how people view it, the sensibility. Are we creating better footfall? Is it a positive impact, longer dwell time? And are we creating joy? And those are the things that are really critical at the base of design. And unfortunately with design, 99.9% of design, those awards are not judged on that merit at all. It's not done. So awards are I would say really of little importance in the bigger scheme of things.
Actually, you're telling me that the clients need to give the awards to the designers.
Well, I think the clients clients, the end users. Yeah, I think if the end users, if there was a way to incorporate end users and a way to kind of read their response to a space, the experience that they have on the space, then that's the real testimony. That's the real, I've sat on many panels and I've, each time on a panel, I can sense, I say it, without the record that we are awarding this, but it's wrong that we award this because this place will close down. And I've never been wrong about a place that's not lasted. It happens because they just haven't appealed to the basic senses of human behavior. And there's a string of them. And if you break all those rules, then the place won't work. And it's, we can talk about that in a bit of detail if you want.
Yeah. Well, quite interesting because at the end it's, for who are you making the design? We are not creating it for other architects and colleagues. And well, of course, we like to have those awards. We like to be in the magazines or television shows or whatever. It's an ambition for a lot of designers, but at the end, why? What's the higher purpose, the meaning of the impact of the interior design? So great to share your opinion about that. And you may do that with all your awards. You are allowed to say it in that way. Hey, you are in the hospitality business, are you? Yeah. Or how do you describe your?
So, like, it's important to understand again, this is a nice segue into what we just spoke about, that we do hospitality spaces, yes. But we're not in the hospitality business, we're in the entertainment business, because all spaces are designed to entertain. So hospitality is not something where people go to have food. You think about it, and that's again the curse of knowledge, you think about people going to restaurants or bars to have food. They're not going to have food. They're going to be sociable, mix with other people, have a fun time out, be entertained. And if you look at the kind of pillars of human needs. So we have certainty as the first one. We all want certainty. The second thing is uncertainty. We all want uncertainty because we all like surprises. If we knew exactly what is going to happen, we'd be bored and we won't do it.
Yeah.
And then we love and attention. We all need it. And the fourth one is critical, is we need significance. Now, within hospitality, if you can balance those things beautifully. So yes, the food quality is, and it's a passport factor. If you don't do good food, then don't play. But if you look at the hierarchy of, sorry, let me rewind on that. So you have to have good food, but most importantly, it's the way the space looks. It's what's the body language of the space? Is it welcoming? Does it make you feel comfortable? Because spaces have personalities, like humans, we unpack it like that. And then how significant does the host and the people make you feel? They must make you feel like you're the most important person that entered their day. The most important. That's just how we're wired. Every single person loves that. We're wired like that. We can be as humble as we want to be, and we can. But we all love that attention. So, and then the food is last. The food is the very last thing, because the truth is that we don't remember taste. We think we remember taste, but we remember the experience. So if I had to ask you, I'm going to ask you a question. What is your best food experience? Your best food memory? If you can tell me, name a food memory. What is just quickly?
Yeah, that's a dessert in the Michelin star restaurant week. They took with a how do you call this ice cold oxygen, how do you call it, stick stuff in Dutch, but it's this frozen dessert on the table. But I can't remember the taste, but the experience of all this dust over the table. You had no plates, no fork, no knife, no spoon, and everybody was picking from the table from each other. That was my
that's a pattern interrupt to things that you're used to, so it's memorable. So everybody remembers 9/11. Most often people will say it was for example, a hot dog with my girlfriend on our first date, or whatever. So most often people are involved in that kind of memory, and the memory was unique. It wasn't always the best place or the best
Nope.
environment or the best setting or the best food. It was just often it's the people that we were with. So it's a social space, and restaurants are social spaces, even if you go on your own or just you and your wife or you and your girlfriend romantically. And there's little things like you need to be not too close to the people next to you because you want privacy, but not too far because we all like a bit of eavesdropping. And it's just subconscious because of the way we're wired. And by the way, on that point, if we say we order food from a menu, yes, we sometimes do. But if you look at your total experience in a restaurant, it's one of the 8 ways you order food. What happens often, though, is you see a plate coming past, you smell it, you see it, and there's a sense of the herd effect as well. So now you have the visual, because we're visual first. 30% of our cortex is devoted to visual stimulation first. And we have 65% of us the visual learners and so forth. I'm maybe going on a bit of a tangent, but when you see that food, there's many other ways. I won't expand on that now. Coming past, most often, how many times have you asked the waiter or the waitress, sorry, what are they having? What is that? Yeah, you know? And often we order like that. So there's a lot of play within the space that is not as kind of black and white as we think of a space, specifically hospitality, when we try and unpack the blocks that make it.
So there's a lot to influence the experience and the choices of all the people, the behavior, of course, then. Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And is that our role as a designer? So what is a designer in your opinion then? What is it that we do?
So I have a short version of it, because if you think about the responsibility, designers are there to solve a set of problems within a very specific set of constraints. That's it. It's nothing more and nothing less. That's what you need to do. Now, that's different, and I don't offend, but there's different to decor. Decor is, and not that it doesn't have a function, but that is often for beauty. So beauty is subjective, though, so we can say it solves it for a very subset, like a home, or where there's a personality involved and sub-personalities and a way to view things. It's definitely different to being an artist. So an artist is self-expression. And John Maida is the vice president of Microsoft for design and AI. So he has this saying, he says, design is an answer to a problem, and art is a question to a problem. So artists have the freedom to question as many things, and often art is like that. But it's a personal journey. They have a personal itch or a personal thing that hurts them, or that they like or dislike, and they find a way through the art to express it. It questions it, though, it doesn't solve it. And but it's a personal journey, and it can be vague. If designers are vague, they're bad designers. You can't be vague. You can't be personal. You have to extract yourself from that problem and have empathy for the problem of the end user. So design is always a middleman in something to read everything, but not have any kind of their personality within the space. If you do that, then you're not solving a problem for the bigger end user group.
So you said personality, you mean your own ego, your designer
ego. Like if you express yourself in a way that it's your expression, it is your
like the artist.
Like the artist, then you're not actually doing the best job of solving the problem that you've been given. And on that problem issue, maybe just expand on that.
Yeah.
Designers are often, so they're misunderstood. They come in the middle third. So we have the front third where the problem is identified. You have the middle third where clients slot you in. And then you have the end third where this entire thing is being built. Now you kind of often across the last third, but not always. And if you're part of the entire equation, you're not as valuable. You can be replaced. You need to be, as a designer, and the best products in the world has always had the designer as part of the problem statement. What is the real problem? Because the problem cannot be read by just having the experience of the previous. It requires a lot of thinking. And so if designers can if there's a way to get designers to sit across the spectrum, the outcome will be infinitely better. The definition of the problem. So Einstein said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I spend the first 55 minutes thinking about the right question to ask. And those questions are often actually wrong.
Yeah. Most of the time, that's what designers do. They think people asking you for an extension. So you assume they need more space or they want more space, and before you know, you can't stop talking about extensions but you don't know if an extension is the right solution. But the client says they want an extension. So how do you deal with that?
So I have a great example on that you just mentioned. So I have a colleague, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to her, and we speak about this quite frequently. And she was asked by a lady, and so we don't do homes, but she does, and to come to the house and make it more intimate because she was feeling quite removed from her home. And what she wanted was to fill the place with more decor. She wanted to fill the place with more color and more art, because in her mind, this is what the negative was of the space, what was missing. Anyway, my colleague arrived there, and because she's aware of those human needs, she spent some time in there and said, you don't have a decor problem, you have a sound problem.
Sorry?
You have an acoustic problem. Sound problem.
Sound problem. Yeah.
You have an acoustic problem. Because what happened in the space, as you talk, the sound would bounce around the room, and it would echo, it'd be flat, it was hollow. And that's what made it cold. And she solved the sound problem, the acoustic problem, just the acoustic problem, and made the space intimate. Just that one. Whereas the client's definition of the problem was lack of stuff. Yeah. It wasn't lack of stuff. It was just because sound is critical to us. And we know already from restaurants, and I think you and I spoke about this once before, it's a big restaurant problem, and it's called the Lombard effect. So the acoustics are really not thought of. So it starts bouncing around the room. The music bounces around the room. And now you and I try to talk, but because of the noise, we talk a little bit louder. Yeah. But now because we're talking a little bit louder, the people next to us are talking a little bit louder because they can't hear each other. And so everybody starts talking a little bit louder. It's a Lombard effect. So now everything is loud. And now it's just a noise and it's a mess. And we're all uncomfortable. So acoustics are, there's other things, of course, we can talk about that if we have time. But acoustics are critical to solve. Yeah,
just one element of all these design aspects, because that's, you're just talking about acoustics right now. We have this safety feeling. You said before, this kind of primal feeling we have. It's sometimes, we hear the story that a woman told us, I have a new place at my job, but it doesn't feel well. And they said, how can you describe the place? She said, well, I'm at the end of the alley, and there's my desk, and I can look outside. But then we discovered that in her back, the whole department was in her back, open in her back. A lot of people entering from the back. It was not safe at all. And we made her conscious of this, that was the problem. She was like, I never thought about that before. So it was so cool. Just one, she had to turn the desk. That was it.
We call it cocooning. We all have a need for cocooning. And if we solve that, then we feel comfortable at home, protected. And we need to feel protected always in the spaces. And it's a subconscious thing often. And on that point, so we're not going to get into that now, but because of that issue within restaurants, we have 8 seating patterns. And we always apply those 8 seating patterns, never anything out of it. Not all 8, of course, but some of the 8. Like
they can find them on your blog, is it? Because and on your website. So
correct. It's a combination of those things, and they all work. And if you apply those things on the principles of that behavior, people will enjoy the space. So they'll feel comfortable. They'll find, and there's different personalities, of course. So within the 8. You appeal to different personalities. Not all people behave the same, but very similarly.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so it's Callie was sharing a big secret actually on his website with all this. So please have a look. We will prepare a website page for you, Callie. It's called instituteofinteriorimpact.com/Callie. We will put a link to the eighth floor plan, hospitality floor plan secrets. Let's call it that way. Yeah, it's definitely good stuff. So, but has it to do with what is it? Is it a primal feeling? We are so many years further, and it's all moving so fast. But what is it?
That's a great question. So think about the fact that everything that you have, everything that you know, every single thing is less than 100 years old. You know, space, travel, cars, planes, every single thing that you have around is less than 100 years old. However, 200,000, 250,000 years, we came off down the trees on the savannah, planes started walking on our hind legs. You know, had some hands free for tools. We could see further and we could walk further. And at some point we started journeying north. But then we had the Ice Age, and within that time, so the radical changes happened. And then things settled down 11,500 years ago, that ended, or more or less, nobody ever knows for sure exactly, but 10,000 years ago, more or less, we started subsistence farming, and now we settled down into a longer, more protected life, bigger community, safer community, better relationships. And the wiring that happened there is the wiring we have today. Nothing happened after that required rewiring. So we think in global terms, in big terms, we think exactly the same as we thought at the time. We have the same fears. So there's no saber-toothed tiger, of course, but there are other fears like deadlines or public speaking, or, you know, we react to those things in exactly the same way. And so the broader things of how we behave today can be traced back to that, and it's similar or almost exactly the same for every single person. We just wired like that. So the stuff that we express externally, a little bit, there are differences. Like color is fluid. Color is quite fluid. So, you know, the red is a color of speed and excitement, and you know, it's used in QSR so people can move in and out of a space a bit quicker. But it's not the same for everywhere. Like in India and Pakistan, we do work in Pakistan. Red is the color of purity. It's the color of wedding dresses. It has a different thing. Also, our sense of proximity is different. So if we live in very built-up areas, our sense of proximity is smaller, like a sense of me and the connection between, and the space between me and the person next to me. If we live in larger open spaces, Africa or here in Oz, our proximity is bigger. We're uncomfortable with people close to us. We need a bigger distance, and that it's not things that it's never quite linear. Now, in Australia, it's quite, because it's a land of immigrants. So you see it often with different cultures coming together. You can see that almost clash and friction happening. Not a clash, but some friction a little bit.
Yeah.
So proxemics and color are fluid. I mean, there was, you know, we could say, for example, why do policemen wear black? Because it's intimidating. It is intimidating. They need to wear black or dark blue. And you could talk about red, talking back to red, like the red tie has become what they call it the Obama uniform, because he made it popular. But we now, because of one person, say it's the dress of a politician. But in 1920s in Philadelphia, a red tie was a symbol of male prostitutes. When that's how they advertised their trade.
That's another story and rules.
So color is very fluid, but the things that drive us, the big things, they're quite consistent in all of us.
Yeah, you know, we have the philosophy form follows meaning. Well, this is the meaning of a red tie can mean a lot. You can end up in another different environment if you act to this story.
Form follows feeling. We talked about that last time.
Yeah, you said form follows feeling. Yeah, and it's great because you're acting on these emotions and this behavior, and that's what's leading you to how to design the perfect environment. You had this. You said this primal feeling, back to that, because you had a quote like you can take the person out of the Stone Age, but not the Stone Age out of the person.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is, and it is quite so. So if you talk about that, maybe rewind on that for a fraction. So Alan Lightman wrote a book, The Accidental Universe, the universe we thought we knew. So he talks there about nature, for example. And so we have a very big attraction as people in general. Designers always say, no, things mustn't be symmetrical. However, if you take people in there, and this is where designers and non-designers clash. So the most comfort for most people are spaces and things of symmetry, because our mind is wired like that. The wings of a butterfly, the petals of a flower, our outer body experiences, all these things, they're symmetrical. And so we spend 99.9% or 99% on something in our development in nature and less than 1% in the built environment. And so everything we've ever been used to and wired to has been symmetrical. So that's how we want things. And so you can be clever about it. And there's a Japanese concept, and I think we spoke about that as well, called fugency, where it's a counterbalance of things of equal weight or different color. And so you get, but it always comes back to symmetry, whether it's a mirror image or the counterbalance, it's the same thing. But just that, and that's simply because they talk about, so Joan Wagaman talks about the self-organization of the brain. It's symmetry. So we can never, and we all wired like that. So we can never say that we have, and as I said, technology and everything that we have now around us, like, oh, we only have 8 seconds concentration now because of the phone. Yes, but those are not big. Those are not the things that drive us, repel us. These are just little behavior,
small actions. Yeah, these are the new things we got in this last 100 years. We have to deal with it. But are you telling me that everyone is searching for this symmetry? Is it really what we are looking for, or how does it feel? What does it do with us as a human if you use this?
No, but it's quite subconscious. So if you create spaces that have balance, so let's just call it then by extension balance. Yeah, we are more comfortable in balanced spaces than in imbalanced spaces. So
I think most of the time our clients, and I think a lot of designers that are here and architects are agreeing, they're looking for harmony, balance, unity.
But they talk about, but we tend to talk about these things without actually thinking about what's causing it and why we should be thinking like this. But like,
why do we want that?
It's important to understand it. So if we get to understand how we think and behave as humans, so that's, you and I spoke about design thinking at some point, and you know, design thinking is incredible and it's nothing wrong. Service design thinking is amazing, but
yeah, tell me because one of the topics is that is really design thinking versus behavioral design, and you have even more steps in between. Let's go to that to describe the difference between that, because it's a way of thinking, a way of seeing things.
Yeah.
As a designer.
So design thinking. So we spoke about design, what design is, and then so let's talk about behavioral design. So behavioral design is the combination of psychology and behavioral science. And it is to understand why we do what we do and to manipulate often what we do, or to give us more information so we can make better decisions. So that's behavioral design. Design thinking is walking a mile in your end user's shoes, having empathy and immersing yourself in that and discovering the things that they need really in the specific environments and designing for those things so they have the best possible, I'm generalizing and making it quite short, the best possible experience, the best possible interface, the best possible use of a product and so forth. Design for behavior is not trying to understand that. So you can say it's a combination of design thinking and behavioral design so that we can see what people do and design patterns or modules of spaces for positive influence. So we can do it like this. We can do it quick. We know in this specific environment, people do this.
You can predict it. Yeah,
it's predictive. So
is it science? Is it science?
Yeah, look, it's based on science.
Yeah.
No, we know scientists, but it's based on, you know, observations, 27 years of looking at security footage or just looking at how people behave and also making mistakes.
You said security footage. Does it mean? Now I'm thinking I always wanted to hang up a camera at the end that I can see how people are using your designs, or you would like to have the first impressions of the people that are going on a birthday party or the first visitors of the restaurant. But you have literally footage of how people behaving in the designs?
So we've looked at reams and reams of that to see just what people do. We're less interested in why they then do it within that space, because that if they do the same thing constantly, and you design for 80% of that behavior, you're designing the solution. You'll never design for 100%.
No.
So looking at that and observing that, so Dana Reilly wrote that book we spoke about last time, Predictably Irrational.
Yep.
And so we're irrational but we're predictably so. So for example, a coffee shop across the road that sells a cup of coffee for $6, but straight underneath me, there's a cup of coffee for $5. It's longer to get there. I've got to get across the traffic, but the setting is such that I just believe that their coffee is better, but it's exactly the same coffee. In fact, you know that because you swap the coffee around and nobody knows the difference, or they guess it wrong, and it's a 50-50 chance, whatever. But it's irrational, but we do it because we believe it, but it's not so.
So is that the added value of an architect, of a designer, what you can do?
You have to, like I said right in the beginning, it is critically important as a designer to design for the end user, to create a space that people will believe and trust in, like you believe and trust in a person. So we aesthetic beings, so we give half the profile and characteristics of a person to that person based on how we judge how they look. So if they're very beautiful, they're also very intelligent. We just do that. We assume that. We don't think about it. It's the same for any space. Now, beauty is subjective, like we also spoke about that. Alain de Botton wrote The Architecture of Happiness. But when people say something is beautiful, they're expressing the way that they want to be or the way that they want to live. And it's the rules are similar, but as I said, there are nuances. So
yeah, so let's go back in that, because people are telling, we want to know from our clients, or at least they are showing us, this is what I like, this is what I call beauty. And then what? How can you work with that? Because sometimes you can just create that picture, to copy paste it, that style, and you just say, okay, I'm a designer, I can realize that, or the builder says, I can build that house for you, no questions asked, you just do it. And at the end, I don't know if it works. I do hope it does. But how do you what can be your first step? What's a good first step as an architect or designer to when people show you, this is what I call beauty?
Yeah, look, obviously you have to challenge that, because the perception of beauty that you have may be quite different to the perception of beauty that your core client patron base has.
Yeah.
So it's important to define the end user first. Who's that end user? Now, the bulk of it, as I say, would be the same. Like the ergonomics are the same. Chairs out 450, it's 470 deep, and there's certain quality of resistance in the foam that we need to have, and there's certain tactilities. And if we talk about all the senses we need to apply, and we spoke about sound, and when we talk about all these things, then there's slight nuances. So and they can differ by age, for example. So so the end user it's a very high-end restaurant. It's at the very top. So it's expensive to go there. The chances then are that the clientele is a much older clientele. It's not a millennial potentially. It's a much older clientele. So they're also not great. They don't have the best eyesight. So you need to think about those extensions. The worst thing in a restaurant space, people can't see the menu. Why can't they see the menu? Because in a very high-end restaurant, lights are dimmed. And they're dimmed only to like 80, sometimes 50 lux on a table. In most cases, then that audience, they're unable to see what's on the menu. So then they take out their phone, and you can see this light going on because then you can see, and that destroys the atmosphere for everybody else. So it's your responsibility as a designer, when you script a story, to speak to the graphic designer, if it's not in your department, to say, the lux is only going to be 50 or 70 or 80. Test this menu with your audience. Make sure that the font is the correct size, and it's black on white. Don't try and funny colors on it, because they need to see it. That's primary number one. So they're all little things that supports or detract but you have to be aware, you have to go on that journey and understand exactly who that user is going to be. Otherwise, you're going to miss a little thing, like somebody constantly putting on a light. And if my dad in his 80s, he'll take the phone, leave the light on, and park this against his salt and pepper holder. So it just shines across because he's now irritated. So, you know,
well, you are ignoring the question of beauty, yeah? So you immediately go to the next, no, but you're immediately going to the next level. And that's what I see all the time. We think people are telling us something and you want to tackle it. But we all have our own intuition or feelings like, I know what to do. I can feel where you're going. But you are immediately going into in the expert position actually of your knowledge. And then you can, maybe you're literally explaining if we take this restaurant owner and he's telling you, I like this menu and I like this chairs and I like this light and I like this, and you immediately can go like, okay, your target audiences are a little bit elderly people. But do you want them to take their phones out to see the menu? And they will say, no, I don't like that. Okay, then we have to zoom out.
Yeah.
And to show you what is literally going on in the experience of your target audience. So we can talk about beauty and this beautiful design chairs, but maybe there are more important things first, or what is it that you? Because that's a problem. What I see, they want to talk about beauty, and you're going to share your knowledge on a more important factor at the end. But
yeah, I mean that thing of beauty is so we find from where we sit that we can convince a client quite easily that the core audience will not find this attractive for these number of reasons. And this will be the knock-on effects of this kind of decision. Like, for example, we often challenge this notion, because designers say that within hospitality, they talk about color, that blue is repulsive for food. And to some extent it is, but it's not true really. It's like we talk about autumn colors and stuff. So we'll break it down like that. First, like what are the big things that make people act in a certain way? And then we'll color in afterwards. What is the fabric? You know, if we talk about a very, like the stuff that we do for a specific client here in the Middle East, it's the same brand name, but it's quite different to what we do here. So for example, but those are nuances, like green is more important there because it's desert space. So nuances around that, and bigger settings, because what is beauty? Like bigger settings for tables, because they don't go out in twos, they go as a family. So it's bigger tables, so bigger chairs, more comfortable chairs. Like these are all things that impact our sense of beauty, because those are the things that we like, because it's our style of living, it's our habits. So you when you break down that end user in what those habits are, how they live, you find a thread of beauty that would appeal to them. It's not something that lives in Pinterest, and most designers make that mistake. It doesn't live there at all.
So you're zooming out all the time. You're zooming out, actually.
Correct.
You are showing them why it looks like that, why it needs to look like that, and not how it looks, how it's going to look, but why it needs to look like that, to explain your client. And I mean, we have a fantastic relationship here with a client that we do a lot of work for, and he's given us, I mean, in the beginning, his briefs were very specific, and now there's a trust where he'll say, this is where we're going. Yeah. This is my budget. And not quite that simple. You know, it's never quite that simple. I'm oversimplifying. Sounds like heaven.
But more or less, I mean, we spend little time now. He knows that we know, and it will bring a solution, which he'll challenge sometimes because he's highly intuitive. He's spent, since he was 18, he's now 60, he's spent his time in restaurants. So there's a lot that he knows just from making mistakes and in learning. So anyway, and he knows. So
you define the goal together. If you're working on hospitality, or I can imagine on office design, it's the same. Residential is a little bit different, but you are defining the end goal, You are describing, you are kind of designing or describing the experience you would like to create.
It is. So it's important when you start, especially hospitality, because we spoke about the fact that it's entertainment. It's critical when you start a project that you script a story. And a story that you script like a movie script. So you script it. What's a story that this restaurant wants to tell? We all want to listen and be part of relatable stories. That's just, again, how we're hardwired, because until we started writing, that's how history got passed on from father to son around campfires and stuff. So we wired for stories. We love stories.
So you're the art director, actually, as a designer. You're the art director. Right. Yeah.
100, you're the art director. So you script a story. And then when you scripted the story, you do the vignettes, you do the little bits that describe the scenes. Now that goes out to the person that's a scout designer, or the scout seeker, or the site scout, to get the right site. Because the site now fits into this. It goes out to the person that designs the uniforms. Think about costumes.
Custom designers.
Costume designer. It goes out to the person that interviews think about characters for a movie. So they come and they cast. You interview people for your restaurant. So, and eventually, so it's exactly the same setting, the same scenery, the same principles. And finally, it informs the decor of the set. So you color, it's exactly the same thing.
So the restaurant or the entertainment zone is the stage, actually.
Correct. It is exactly what it is. It's a stage, and every single person that serves inside, they're characters within this plot, within the script.
The actors.
They're all actors. They're all characters within it. They all fulfill that function. And so the best restaurants are always people that understand this and understand that those people need to be trained. For example, the best server won't just come and stand there and pass you a menu. They'll strike up a conversation. I love that bag that I see, because whatever, strike up something, find a way to strike up something that's beyond just food, that really makes a person feel special, that drags them into the moment. So once you understand all of that, now often designers, and I'm not saying we are right and they design, I'm just saying that the story that you script doesn't need to be exact story that necessarily the users of the space understand, but it's a story that binds everything together. So they'll feel the comfort, because very, very few companies actually have all the players, all the role players, all those functions under one roof. I would say almost none. So, we have design companies, interior architects, and they design the space. We have graphic and brand designers, and they design, and the front door to the space is your online presence, is never the front door of the restaurant. So somebody's doing that interface, and some, they're different. There's so many people putting this together. If they have the same story that they can read, that is the concept. They understand the same emotion. They understand the same feeling. And the best movies in the world, the best, are the ones where that plot is so beautiful, the characters really fit into it. You can feel when it's abrasive, and then the soundtrack that comes with that. The best, they have the best, that there's a beautiful soundtrack to it. And that's why music's so important in a restaurant. It's critical. This client that I spoke about earlier I mentioned his name, Bradley Michael, is a great client. He loves to put, and that's we didn't say, he just has this amazing tactility and this amazing feel for things. He likes to play poetry in his bathrooms. So it's music in the dining and poetry, and it's such a disruption to when you're in the bathroom that you just don't expect it, but it's beautiful, right? It keeps you entertained even there. So
I was it reminds me of I was a few weeks in one of my favorite bars in Den Bosch. It's a really cool outgoing bar, and you have a lot of noises. You can literally sit there and listen to the stories of the other people, because it's so noisy. It's the wrong example of a good restaurant, but if you like entertainment and you you have a lot of visuals, it's great. A lot of all your senses. But I went to the toilet. And the first thing is there is a sign. You have to go down. Don't ask the cooks if the toilet is downstairs. That's the first sign they have. So that's already fun. Then you go down and they had a new thing. They were playing a kind of, it was conversation and sounds like you were listening to the conversations above. So a woman was talking like, hey, did you see the man on the end of the bar? He's cheating with his wife. Just have a look when you go back to the toilet. It was like your neighbor was gossiping in the toilet. It was I went 3 times to the toilet. I want to hear if there was another tape playing. So it was such a cool thing. It was what you were doing. You go back. You were looking for a guy at the end of the bar, and there was a guy, and it's not even his story, but you make the story up.
You're making up the story.
It's entertaining. It was entertaining. Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah. I send everybody to the toilet. Yeah, you have to go to the toilet.
Yeah, those are all. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, but I'm going to use that. That's a great.
Yeah,
I'm not going to.
You have poetry. That's for another target audience, I guess. Maybe it works when they did a really, really heavy poetry or with classical music. You're like, what is this? Hey, you can be amazed as well. But this was really like, hey. And normally it's quiet at the bathrooms. With men, it's a different world than with women in the toilets. Now we have gender neutral, so it's changing for us at the toilets. Yeah. But it was cool. Yeah. It was a story to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, but look, and talking about that, there's obviously certain by category when it's younger as well, designing a place in such a way that eye contact is possible but not uncomfortable. Yeah. So, like, for example, a horseshoe bar is better than a bar facing a wall because eye contact is more possible. And that eye contact, that moment of energy that you get in eye contact, even if it's just, doesn't have to be a sexual thing. It's just making eye contact because it's a social thing. Yeah. It's a very important thing to manipulate in a way that it's natural and something that's in certain age groups more important and others less important. So end user, obviously, understanding that again is important.
Yeah. So, yeah, you left me with even more questions than before with this podcast. It's always when I speak to you. You have so many elements that you take care of in your designs. So that's why it works. Obviously, your designs. So let's wrap it up and talk about the ultimate outcome of an interior design. The role of us as designers. What is it that we need to do? We can make an impact on our environment. We are literally designing the world together. So what's the ultimate outcome?
Look, apart from all the things that everybody speaks about, always, like we're aware that we need to be sustainable and all of that. So I think you've had enough of that. So I'm not going to talk about that. So, but it is important. So I'm not minimizing that. I'm just saying for the sake of our conversation, let's not talk about that. But so it's the responsibility that you have, first of all, to your client. Their clients come to you, put in a lot of money on the line to do something that they believe in. They come to you because they believe in you. Very, very important for you to be selfless in this entire thing. It's completely selfless. You are the translator between the client and their dream. You are the facilitator. You're not the God designer that now needs to have this space in your image. Like, people must know that Sven or Mark or Callie, that's not it. If it's a net result, it's great, but that's a second result. It can't be that. The first important thing is to really make yourself aware of those drivers and those nuances, and to be able to actually design on budgets. It's not good enough to say that you don't understand and we need to do this and that because it's simply something that you believe in fictitiously. Like, there can be no room in designing commercial space, for example, for you to be, as a designer, intuitive about because you believe because it may just work. It has to work. You have that responsibility. And so as far as your position, that is your responsibility. Now, the client may do other things, for example, like have the wrong food. Like, we're not chefs, we're not cooks, we don't train people to behave in a certain way when they serve. That's not our role. As far as our role is, that is critically important, because clients will soon realize that this is how you view, and that'll create a nice harmony for you, and it'll come to bless you in work moving forward. it's not going to harm you at all ever. It'll just come to bless you, because the client is not going to go anywhere else if what he gives you is treated with such respect and the outcome is so positive, and he needs to only worry about those other things that they need to fill in, that they're responsible for. And I think really that's where we sit. And if we can get that right, because I think we are quite aware now that people are very self-aware, and they're very, very, we're not in the industrial age anymore. We don't live in square boxes. We're not trained. We don't sit in an industrial kind of assembly line. We're brave in how people go out and they search for their own happiness, they search for their own purpose, and that's the main driver. People are quite adventurous now in terms of finding that sweet spot for themselves, so they can have true calm, happiness, can be centered, and so I think for the most part, design has not matured in that way, where it's teaching us to be so in tune with our person that we design for, that's what we need to achieve. It's not about balance of, when we talk about color and tonalities and textures, and we tend to think in layers, and designers, by and large, I'm not saying it's wrong, but that is a final step. But to start there is wrong. Like that doesn't help us to move forward in terms of our responsibility as designers. We first need to have those real basics in place, and then color those things in later, because they are important, but they're not what they don't drive the solution, right?
So
I think,
actually, a lot of designers, architects talk about their own signature. In our training program, we have a model about that, the signature strategy, to find your own signature. But we're not talking about the aesthetics. We're talking about the kind of core values or the impact, the approach you want to make with your designs. If that can be your signature, your strategy, that people will recognize your goal or the impact you want to make as a designer, you're raising your value so much more than just creating this beautiful image. Because then what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, so it is quite difficult often not to end up with things that are often you can pick up the signature, but that is often a result of availability of suppliers and your circle and things that you do that you bounce off. So it's very difficult to design, actually talking about that, without something in that space reminding you of somebody's work. So but one needs to be as far, but that's, again, it's a bit like talking about color or a bit like proxemics and stuff. These are little things that they're not the big drivers.
No.
So I agree with that 100%. Like, your approach in what you do is so critical and important for a client to understand, and so that they also understand, obviously, where they sit with you and because they need to, every client that approaches you for some work, they have a massive responsibility in other things that they need to do, like like we spoke earlier about the return, which is none of your responsibility. So critical that you hold that up, but that they know exactly your approach and the blocks that you will actually color in for them and the ones that you can't. And designers often are not, and we also sometimes guilty of that we're not too transparent about the things we're not great at.
Yeah. Hey, last question, do you need to be a good designer, what we design to define as a good design? Do you need to be the best designer in the world?
No. And how do you define the best? We spoke at the opening question about awards and stuff. So how do we define the best? We define the best often by what other people in our industry defines as the best, and that's the wrong way to look at it. It's completely the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at it is completely as no space is a space until somebody uses it. It's not. It's just nothing. And so if we can create spaces of whatever nature, placemaking, where people find joy, happiness, whatever, the best result of themselves. Like, for example, and without getting sidetracked, high ceilings are most conducive for creative thought, and low ceilings are most conducive for analytical thought. It's just the way, and people know that from neuroimaging that they've done. They know that. It's not like we're guessing these things. Through neuroimaging, we see the way the brain fires up, that's what happens. And if you're not aware of these things as a designer, you're doing your client a disfavor. So that's the most important thing, and that's the best outcome. Best is not what other designers think of your work, I would say. Yeah.